This is writing equations in slope-intercept form. The first thing I'd like to do is review with you how we find the slope of a line. In order to do that, we need 2 points. You're going to designate one of the points as point 1 and one is point 2. Once you've done that, you take the y from point 2 minus the y from point 1. That's going to be your rise. And on the bottom here, you're going to do the x from point 2 minus the x from point 1. That's your run. This is your slope. Okay? So we're being asked to, for each of these graphs, to write an equation for the line that we see in slope-intercept form. Now, when we say slope-intercept form, we're talking about the form y equals mx plus b, where m is our slope and b is our y-intercept. So in order to write this equation, I need to know 2 things. First, I need to know the y-intercept. Where does this line cross the y-axis? So if I look at this particular line here, it's crossing the y-axis at 0, 2, or 2. So for the y-intercept, I'm going to put plus 2 because it crosses at positive 2. Now I'm filling in some of the other things that I know are going to be in my equation, like the y, the equal sign, the x, the plus. The thing I am missing right here is the slope. So that's the next thing that I have to find. So I'm just going to call this guy here point 1. And I'm going to call this one point 2. And I'm going to use that information to find my slope. Okay? With this formula right here. So the y from point 2 is 2. Minus the y from point 1 is 4. The x from point 2 is 0, minus the x from point 1 is 1. I get negative 2 over negative 1. 2 negatives will cancel each other out, so it'll just be 2 over 1, which I can just write as 2. So for slope here, I'm going to put 2. So the equation for this line would be y equals 2x plus 2. Let's take a look at another one. So in this problem, I see that the line is crossing over the y-axis at 5. So the first thing I can fill in is my y-intercept. That's going to be positive 5. The second thing I need is the slope. So to find the slope of this line, I'm going to designate a point 1 and a point 2. So this time I'm just going to call this one point 1. And this one point 2. Doesn't matter which one you decide as point 1 or point 2, you just stick with it throughout your formula. So the y from point 2 is 5 minus the y from point 1 is 2. The x from point 2 is 0 minus the x from point 1 is 2. And I get 3 over negative 2 here. So negative 3/2 is my slope. I could also write it as a mixed number or a decimal, but I prefer to just leave it as an improper fraction because then I've got my rise and my run. All right, let's take a look at one more. This time, I see that my line is crossing the y-axis at negative 4. So for my y-intercept, I'm going to put in negative 4. For this one, my slope, I could use the formula to figure it out, but I see it's a horizontal line. It's completely flat. It's going to have a slope of 0. It doesn't have any sort of slope to it. It's just flat. So 0 times x, I know is going to be 0. And plus negative 4 just gives me negative 4. So for this one, for my equation, I can just say y equals negative 4. That's going to be my equation for this line. This is a simplified slope-intercept form. For our next problem, we don't have a graph. We're just being given the 2 points, and they want us to write the equation for that line. So it's the same type of problem we just did, we just don't have a picture this time. So I'm still going to decide which of these points is going to be point 1 and point 2. And I'm going to use that formula, y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So the y from point 2 is 7, minus the y from point 1 is negative 1. The x from point 2 is 4, minus the x from point 1 is 0, and I get 8 over 4, which this will reduce to 2 over 1, which is just 2. So my slope here is going to be 2. So y equals 2x plus, when I go back to my points, one of the points they gave me happens to be the y-intercept. The y-intercept always starts with 0 and then has a number, because everything on the vertical axis, you go 0 left and right, and then up or down to be on the y-axis. So this guy right here is our y-intercept. So it crosses at negative 1. Then I would simplify this plus minus here, and I would write my equation as y equals 2x minus 1. All right, let's try another one. So this time, we're trying to write an equation of this line. So we've got point 1 here, point 2. So the first thing I'm going to try to do is find my slope. So I'm going to do 5 minus 5 for my y's, 4 minus 0 for my x's, and I get 0 over 4, which is just 0. So a slope of 0, and it passes through the y-axis at 0, 5, so that's 5 up on your y-axis. So 0 times x is going to be 0. No matter what x is, it'll be 0. And 0 plus 5 will be 5. So here's my equation. When I see something like this, that tells me that's an equation for a horizontal line. All right. And our last problem, a real-life example. So here's a graph that shows the distance remaining to complete a tunnel. So when they started digging the tunnel, they were at 0 months and they had 3,500 feet to dig, okay? And then at 4 months, they have 1,500 feet remaining to dig. So they want us to find an equation that represents this tunnel digging here. So the first thing I'm going to do is find the slope. So I'm going to decide I'm going to have a point 1 and a point 2. So to find the slope, I'm doing 1,500 minus 3,500 and 4 minus 0. So this gives me negative 2,000 over 4. This can definitely be simplified. So I'm going to divide both of these by 4. And I get negative 500 over 1. So this is just negative 500. So basically, every month, they're being able to dig 500 feet. So their total is going down 500 feet. So negative 500x. And it crossed the y-axis at 3,500. So here is my equation. All right, now they're asking us in the next question, how much time does it take to complete the tunnel? Well, if I look at my graph, it eventually stops right here. This is called our x-intercept because this is where the graph is going to cross the x-axis. And I see it crosses right at 7, 0. That means it's the 7th month and there's 0 feet left to dig. So when it says how much time does it take to complete the tunnel? 7 months. So even though our x-intercept is not part of the equation, it can still give us some valuable information in a real-life situation.